Jarvis, drop my needle.
Hello, this is the hardcore legend Mick Foley, and if you are interested in listening to idiots, you came to the right place. Have a nice day.
Woo! That's an attention getter.
He's a very strange young man.
He's an idiot. What we're dealing with here is a complete lack of respect for the law.
Oh my God, he's an idiot.
You know, of course, that you're out of your jurisdiction.
Personally, I think you're an idiot.
But that's the evidence in the car.
I was going into Toshi Station to pick up some power converters.
Always like to keep my audience riveted.
Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, friends and fiends, and welcome to Free Range Idiocy, the podcast about everything, but mostly just the stuff we like. When Vince McMahon retired, and yes, I am using my air quotes there, from WWE last year, there was much rejoicing in wrestling land, as the majority of the fan base was sick of his shenanigans and looking forward to some storytelling that worked beyond a third-grade humor level. Triple H was in creative control of the company, and things were looking up until Vince returned, complete with villainous / utterly pathetic and dumbass-looking mustache to take the controls once again, leading to last-minute show changes, a return to stupidity, and ultimately the sale of his company to UFC to form a new brand called TKO. So why in the hell are we talking about Triple H? Well, because it appears that Vinnie Mac might have finally met his match, as he's now out of the creative completely, and Triple H is back on top. How did it all happen? We'll discuss it all in this episode 145, Bow Down to the King. I am your Uncle Todd, and with me, as always, is the man who dreams of someday owning one of the Terminators that Triple H wrecked back at a WrestleMania. He has been my partner in idiocy for over 2 decades and travels through time, but purely for business reasons. I give you the man they call Tim.
Greetings and salutations, my friend. How are you?
You know, I'm doing pretty good. Yourself?
I am well. I actually want to find one of those just to recreate, like see if I can do some animatronics with it, some robotics with it, and, like have it freak someone out like the invasion is coming.
So, the best you do is you'd find like an old Chuck E. Cheese animatron that you'd be able to attach it to. It'd be dancing to like some happy birthday song.
Some kids walking down the sidewalk and be like, and they're like, ah! It's like, good Lord.
Look at you. Wu-Tang isn't just for the children. It's also for the man they call Tim.
That's right.
Oh, so yes, we are going to be discussing wrestling. Be forewarned, ladies and gentlemen. But we're going to be talking about the behind-the-scenes stuff almost as much as the in front of the curtain stuff. So, you might enjoy it. Stick around.
This is the brainchild of Uncle Todd. This is an Uncle Todd special right here. He reached out to me yesterday at about 12:15 in the afternoon Sunday and said, man, they called Tim. Chop, chop. Let's crank out an outline on this topic. And bam, it was done by 3.
Well, is that how that works? I don't remember.
That's right. I get right to work when Uncle Todd has one of his moments of revelatory amazement.
The muse was upon me.
Let's have a little bit of LA Night right there.
Oh my gosh, you're gonna make me. I'm not playing requests here.
Hey, I put the outline together at request, so you're gonna play a couple of songs by pressing the button.
That wasn't request. That was an order, sir.
Good God.
All right, so we are going to get into all of that. However, before we do that, we need to get into a little something we like to call the Week in Geek, some bits and bobs of entertainment and geekery, and the Week in Geek.
Feels so funky.
What do we got this week, sir?
Well, we are, as we are wont to do during this time of year, kicking us off, hitting lead off, is Tales from the Fantasy Gridiron.
Dear God, if I'd known
That'd
this.
That'd be kind of cool if we could get that football theme while we're actually doing this live and just hear it. I love that football theme when you add it in.
You know what would be great is if I just had a bottle of bourbon with a crazy straw stuck into it right now.
Speaking of which, we went to our restaurant Friday night, and I asked our waiter.
They still think you're a mob boss, eh?
What? Nah, well, they call me Fat Tim. But anyways,
and that only applies because you've lost quite a bit of weight, sir. You're looking svelte, looking good.
Thank you, sir. No, it is not FAT. It's PHAT.
I see. Yes, I gotcha.
But I was asking what they had for new bourbons because I knew the owner had brought some in. And I couldn't remember the names of them because it had been a couple of weeks since we had been there. And I said that what I thought was the name of one of them. So he brings the bottle over. One of the waitresses, Uncle Todd doesn't know the layout of this bar, but we sit at a high top that is somewhat close to where the bar is, and it's actually where the waiters and waitresses show up to get their drinks to then bus to their tables.
Which is reserved on a weekly basis.
It is. Every Friday, it's same place. Boom, there it is. So the waitress she's there to pick up her drink. She turns around. She sees this bottle of whiskey. I'm starting to just read it over, and she just deadpan. She's like, "You want a straw for that?"
Lovely. And
we got a good giggle or two out of that. It's like, yeah, it does seem like the waiter brought over a rather large pour of the of the bourbon. So, but I sampled. It's called Heaven Hill Bottle and Bond.
Oh yeah,
very good, very good.
Heaven Hill is some good stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, big fan of my Kentucky bootlegging connection is a very big Heaven Hill fan.
He's bound down. Excellent. So, and we were talking about generous pours the other day. We went to a company happy hour, and I ordered a double. And when they brought me the glass, so it was like a glass like this. It was like filled up to
And that's a good sized rocks glass you've got there.
Yes, and it was like almost over half. And I'm looking at that like.
Oh God bless bartenders like that. Oh,
wonderful. And one of my coworkers looked and they're like, double? That's about a quarter of the bottle right there. It's like, I will take that and I will not say a word.
Oh yeah, I usually refer to that as the band pour. That's usually,
gosh.
if they know you're with the band, you go in and you get a double. It usually turns into a quad. It's
oh gosh, yeah. It was beautiful. I nursed it. It was fine. All was good, but my goodness, it is crazy though when you go to different places how the pours differ.
Yeah,
you go from very sparse to very generous, and
I'm a big fan of the folks who don't use the little measuring cup thing there.
Yeah, when I see
that come out, I'm like, this is a one and done right here. This is not my type of place.
Like it was really funny. Like my waiter friend, when he would pour, it was a total eyeball. And he was normally more generous. Mm-hmm. And then there came a point where one of the owners was around, and he went right to the measuring. It's like, they're around.
And at that point, you're like, okay, I understand.
I get it. I've had more than my fair share of bonus pours. So, but nonetheless, this is not the whiskey review. This is the Week in Geek.
Oh, son of a bitch! I thought we were getting around this. I thought you'd forget.
Transition back to Tales from the Fantasy Gridiron. My team last week, sadly, or not, I shouldn't say sadly, melancholy, tied. So no win, no loss, but I'm at 2-3-1, 2 wins, 3 losses, 1 tie. But right now, Quick Slants is up 165, 135. Each myself and my opponent have 1 player left to play. My player is projected to post more points than his, and also Lamar Jackson is outdoing his quarterback by about 30 points. So I am anticipated to win 177 to 143, which would put me at 3-3-1, which keeps Uncle Todd's prognostication alive at a 500. All I got to do is get a win or two above that to prove him wrong. So we will continue to see how this unfolds. I will say this season has been my least active on the free agent front. I really haven't picked up any players since the draft. I've just moved guys around based on how they're performing, and I'm putting together a pretty good season that way. I haven't had to overlook. There really isn't a lot of talent.
Are you really?
Though.
You're fighting. You're hoping to get the 500.
I'm almost 500, but I'm also where am I? I'm in 6th. I went from 8th to 6th. If I win this, I'll move up probably to 4th. So I'll be in the top 4 on 0 moves. Zero. All right. Well, we will. I'll keep you all posted next week when I go to 4-3-1. And
oh boy, I can't wait.
Wrong.
I can't wait till you're 3-4-1, and then you're fighting to get back to 500 again.
All right. Well,
Glorious.
Oh yeah, do you have Glorious on there?
I do, but you don't get it until you get the win.
Tickle the ivories. Come on.
Oh my gosh,
that's right.
I never listened to crap when I was doing college radio.
I think I was helping you out, too.
You were.
No, I won't give in till I'm victorious. And I will defend
Indeed.
Yeah.
There we go. All right. Well, you may have noticed we've not, over the last 2 episodes, Week in Geek, talked much about Loki. Part of this is I am woefully behind. I'm up to episode 2, have not seen episode 3.
I just got there myself.
Are you in episode 3?
No, I just watched episode 2 last night.
Okay.
I've been waiting.
Okay.
I've been waiting for my daughter to for our time to coincide, and then as I'm beginning to watch, she's like, what episode is this? I'm like 2. She's like, oh, I watched this after Homecoming. I'm like, okay, so I could have watched this anytime over the past week. That's great. Great communication going on in our household. Great communication.
Just fantastic.
Yes.
Well, our Week in Geek is going to be very Star Wars focused, and we will pay homage to a great of the boxing theatrical sense. But first, basically our 2 primary stories are from the just recently wrapped up Ahsoka series. First one comes by way of our good friends at ScreenRant.com. Basically, the title of this one is Why Baylan Skoll is More Important to Ahsoka Season 2 than Grand Admiral Thrawn. And I thought they made a very interesting point here. Speaking about how, it made sense in the first season here, as really a lot of folks refer to Ahsoka season 1 as kind of Rebels season 5, that it involved Thrawn, given Thrawn's, presence in the Rebels series and how that tied to Ezra and how that whole series kind of ended. But what this article gets into is looking ahead, with Thrawn being the focus of 1, and then having made his way back to the, kind of our root galaxy, if you will, from Star Wars, with Ahsoka, Sabine, Baylan, and Sati now kind of stranded at Peridea. It kind of sets the table, if there is a season 2 for Ahsoka, for now Baylan to maybe be the main villain as he pursues whatever it is he is going after, which a lot of fans, and I would tend to agree, seem to think is something orbiting around the Mortis gods that became a thing in Clone Wars, and I think had some sort of presence in Rebels. I haven't gotten to that point yet in my viewing. But the fact that, for Thrawn, his story has kind of been told with regards to Ahsoka. There really isn't a huge reason for them to intersect in season 2 or for Thrawn to really be a part of it. It was kind of like, season 1 had that tie-in because she was looking for Ezra. They found Ezra. Ezra, of course, now is still lost to them because he's gone back to the original galaxy, and they're the ones that are stranded now.
Well, no, they found him, so they know where he is. Before, they just had no idea where he was. So now it's like we have a pretty good idea where he is.
We do, and he's made his way back to Hera. So there's a bit of a reunion to be had there. But now Thrawn, his focus now turns to Dathomir. Now turns to carrying out his diabolical schemes. And so in season 2, let me take a step back. In season 1, one of the complaints from Ahsoka season 1 was, well, we never really got a payoff to Baylan Skoll or to Shin Hati or what was going on there. They ended up splitting. Skoll is off on some sort of, journey to wherever he's going. Shin is kind of like lost almost. She kind of goes back to this group of nomads and has kind of declared herself their leader in a way. But what it does, I think, does set the table nicely for season 2, where we can, and part of season 1 was there was no closure to those stories. I think now we're starting to see the genius behind that, because if there is a season 2, you focus really all of the storytelling around Peridea. Is it Peridea or Peridea? I forget what it is.
I have no idea.
I think it's Peridea. Around Peridea and what's going on there, with Baylan being the focus. And, if as we've seen, as we, covered in prior episodes, if the rumors are true that maybe Shin is going to end up being kind of a Mara Jade, stand-in, maybe it's a story of her, kind of coming around to Ahsoka's original offer to help her, as well as them confronting whatever it is that Baylan is going to unleash.
It is Peridea, by the way.
It is Peridea. Thank you. Which one of those things is basically this being or this creature called Abeloth, who is supposed to be, I guess, for the Mortis gods, there was the father, the son, and the daughter. Well, Abeloth is the mother, who is basically not been seen before. So it could be him trying to tap into some power that doesn't in fact break the cycle, because it may cause some sort of annihilation of sorts. So I think it's an interesting article. It poses an interesting question, where we can kind of, delve maybe a little bit more into the Baylan Shin relationship. And we can kind of get a little bit more of the backstory that we didn't get, toward the end of that season, because really the story at that point was really serving more the journey of Thrawn to get back to the galaxy. But what are your thoughts on if there is a season 2 of it being, really just Peridia focused and focused on Baylan and Shin?
I mean, I think it's interesting. I don't think there's enough there to carry the weight of an entire, even like 6 episodes.
Yeah.
I mean, I think there is, but okay. Let me put it this way. I don't think there's enough there that Lucasfilm would want to spend an entire 6-episode series just there with no Thrawn, no connection to the prime galaxy of the home galaxy of Star Wars, no Hera, no, Republic, no nothing, to strictly take place in this galaxy, the galaxy farther away, or maybe it's closer. I don't know. I don't think that's going to work. From a geek point, oh my gosh, yeah, totally. You could milk the living snot out of that. However, you can't just placate the absolute hardcore Star Wars fans who want to deep dive into this, because number one, a lot of those people are not going to be placated no matter what you do anyways, as we have seen, and I'm well on record as saying. So it doesn't matter if you did do that, they'd still be pissed about something. I think that no matter what, you're going to have to link it back to what's happening in the main Star Wars galaxy. Now, how much you do that,
yeah,
I think that's up for debate. But I think you have to go back and forth to some degree, and that at the end of that somewhat of that Ahsoka season 2, which has it been greenlit? Have they said for sure? I mean, it feels like a no-brainer.
I haven't heard. I mean, if I was, sorry, you were making a point, and then I'll say what I was going to say. But if it's greenlit, I think that has to be the story of them getting back. Or at the very least, at some point, it has to become focused on that, because Baylan is such a threat. And if he does really want to end the cycle, he ain't going to end it in this other galaxy. He's got to get back to the other galaxy. So at some point, the series has to turn towards that. And if you're going to turn towards that, then there should be some sort of interplay back and forth. Yeah.
Because that does allow you to further the storyline, depending on what you do between now and that next season. If you decide to throw in, a season of Mando, that all of a sudden now starts dealing with some of these things peripherally, or I don't know, but it does. To me, it has to bounce back and forth, even if it's like 2/3 Peridia and 1/3, the galaxy far away that we know.
Yeah. No, I 100% agree that if they do a season 2, I think the end result is them finding their way back to the main galaxy. And I'm wondering if it would be done in such a way that it lines up with the Heir to the Empire movie, because now you have Ahsoka and Sabine and maybe whoever else they run into along the way, who they bring back with them, that they are now basically pieces on the chessboard for what is to come in Heir to the Empire. And that is going to be the thing. And it stays true to the books, because when we talked about that the original trilogy of books, the undoing of Grand Admiral Thrawn was basically the threat that he couldn't see. And, you see Ezra, who's snuck his way back. So Thrawn has no idea Ezra's back. He has no concept that Ezra is a piece on the chessboard now. Now, if you bring Ahsoka and Sabine back in the same way, where he pretty much believes they are written off, like, this plays right into the weaknesses of the character, because he's so focused on the board and the pieces on the board that the things that happen in the background that he doesn't have visibility into are usually the things that undo his plans and what he's trying to accomplish. So I think that makes sense. I think I think it's a good way to take the Baylan character and kind of round his story arc out, because from what he like what they started in season 1 with just his great dialogue and the way they kind of dipped into, I mean, just the whole interaction between him and Shin, and the way they kind of work the samurai aspect into it, and the history that he kind of calls back to kind of briefly. He doesn't go too deep, but he kind of goes back into the Jedi ways, and talks about like Ezra being this sort of like fake Jedi in a way, or not brought up in the right ways, but he brought her up. But like there's all these things he talks about that would be great to get some context to, and they could explore that in season 2, whether it's through flashbacks or something else. And there's also the issue too, or not the issue, but there's also the aspect of, Anakin is there in some way, shape, or form, and does Anakin become kind of intertwined into what Baylan's trying to do? I mean, some people believe, some fans have theories that he's now in that father role, for the Mortis gods. Like he's actually achieved the thing that he was predicted to do by bringing balance to the Force, because that is what the father character was representing. And so, if that's the case, how does that factor into it as well? So I think there's like some things to be wrapped up on Peridia before they come back and have an active role in what will be the sequence of events taking place in Heir to the Empire. So it's kind of cool. Cool. All right. Next item is, my title for this is Theory Explains How Thrawn's Resurrected Night Troopers lines up with canon. Once again, from our friends at ScreenRant.com. Basically, there's a theory explaining exactly how the Night Troopers could come back to life, and it fits into the canon rules, if you will. Really, the headline on this one, it just comes down to the red cloths that you see on the Stormtroopers. This is a callback to Clone Wars Season 4, according to this article, where the Night Sisters were unable to bring back basically or we're unable to resurrect the dead unless they were basically placed in these burial pods that were made from red cloth. And so the thought is and it's kind of a I mean, it's not a crazy theory or kind of an out there theory. I even thought of this too. Like when you saw, I'm forgetting the character's name, but the character in the first couple episodes of Ahsoka, who we thought was Ezra, it was the Inquisitor.
Yeah.
He had those cloths on him too, and when he was killed,
he did.
He did. Yes.
Wow, that character really stuck in my mind.
I can't even remember his name.
Yeah.
But basically when we see the Stormtroopers, they have some of the same, they're wearing the same type of cloth or clothing like he had. Or in this case, there's swaths of cloth over it. So there is that thought that there's something tied to that cloth and the powers that they have. So this also, of course, opens up a weakness for Thrawn's plan, which is if he's trying to do the whole army of the dead sort of thing, it seems like there's a way to make it so they can't reanimate, which is you kind of remove the burial cloths and then the magic doesn't quite work,
All undone by a pair of space scissors.
Basically. Hey, we have space whales. Space scissors aren't that far away.
Snip, snip, baby.
Indeed. But yeah, so it was just, that was really the kind of the thrust of the article, was just, kind of tying what we saw in Ahsoka back to something that happened in, kind of a middle season of Clone Wars that kind of keeps it consistent to the canon and the story. And, brings about, kind of this, the supernatural power in the same way the Jedi have these supernatural powers through the Force. The Night Sisters are able to do what they're able to do through their magic through these means, and just proposing that maybe we end up seeing, whether it's in season 2 of Ahsoka, which we just talked about, Thrawn probably isn't going to have a part in, but maybe more so the movie Heir to the Empire, that it could be part of his undoing. Too much faith into this dark magic could be the thing that undoes, Thrawn, who typically doesn't put a lot of stock into that. So yeah, just kind of an interesting article there. Thoughts on that, sir?
Again, space scissors, man.
Space scissors. All right. Finally, we bid adieu to a legend.
This one hurts.
A legend of the theater. You might be thinking of some great Oscar-winning actors, such as maybe Henry Fonda or I don't know. I can't think of any other. Do you have any else?
you Henry Fonda. That's all you got, eh?
That's the name that Tom Hanks. He's won an Oscar a couple times.
Okay, Henry Fonda and Tom Hanks. Wow, that's again very interesting.
Matthew McConaughey. He won an Oscar.
He did.
He did.
Really?
All right.
I had no idea.
He was in what was it called? Dallas. Something.
Dallas Buyers Club.
Yes. Yeah. I think he won it for that.
Oh.
So in the pantheon of great theater actresses, there is one that shines, well, like a sore thumb after it gets popped in a boxing match. We bid adieu to one Burt Young, who played the infamous Paulie from the Rocky films. He died at age 83 last week. We're recording this on October the 23rd, so that would put us around October, what would that be, 16th?
Sure.
But he passed away. He did get an Oscar nomination for his role in Rocky.
Mm-hmm. And deservedly so.
Yeah. But he was 83 years old. But that is what he is most known for, playing Adrian's brother, a defeated, resentful, loyal, and bitter, caring about people enough to hurt them just to draw attention to his grief sort of character. And the article from Variety.com has a really nice rundown. Paulie Panino was his full name. But he was a problematic friend who shouts at Adrian during her pregnancy, resulting in the premature birth of Rocky's son. He draws Balboa into a street fight in 1990's Rocky IV and is the cause of the Balboa's bankruptcy. So Paulie is kind of a thorn, if you will, on the rose of the Balboa family.
Yeah. Yep.
But a memorable character nonetheless. As I told Uncle Todd, I confused fiction with reality and thought Burt Young had passed away back in 2012, when in fact that was his character Paulie, who died in 2012. So for the last 11 years, I thought Burt Young was not with us. So it was to my shock that he finally apparently did pass away.
Which is understandable, because as we were discussing in our pre-production meeting, Burt looked like he was about 70 back in 1976. And, there was some brilliant Redditor commenter who had said, well, you got to remember, we as, people really didn't start drinking water until about 2000. And back in the 70s, cigarettes were considered oxygen. So between that and the leaded gas, people aged a little differently now, which is, oh my gosh, yes. Look at how people age now as opposed to how people age back in like the 70s and 80s. And it really is jarring when you see people. You're like, oh my gosh, were they like 60 there? Like, no, that's 32. Like, oh, jeez.
Holy moly.
What the hell? But I remember Burt, of course, for Rocky. But then one of my favorite is Back to School, because so quotable there, and he talks about, how he was a father, and he, tough love, and he's like, I put one of my boys through college, I put the other through a wall. It was just great, but yeah, no, it was so great. And it seemed like a genuinely, like, one of those guys, almost like a Paul Sorvino. Mm-hmm. Those guys who you look at and you're like, oh my gosh, they look like some of the most frightening guys, and they're some of the most seem like the most sensitive, tender-hearted individuals, like when it comes to their craft and the craft of acting. Mm-hmm. And still managed to find that machismo for the characters, but also had this wonderful relationship and truly loved the craft and the profession of acting. And it's a testament to him. I mean, how many movies was he in? He was at
least 7 with Rocky.
166 flicks.
Jeez,
that he was in, and apparently he has a couple in the can that are like,
oh wow.
I think there's a couple that are upcoming. So yeah, he's 168 movies that he was, and I guess he was a writer on a couple. What was he a writer on? Oh, he has a writing credit on an episode of Beretta. That's interesting.
There you go.
But yeah, no, a prolific actor and one of those guys who, gosh, it's almost like when you think about musicians, and people kind of give short shrift to one-hit wonders.
Yeah.
Which I always think is unfair, because even if it's like, a one-hit wonder, we're like, oh my gosh, that song is kind of embarrassing or whatever.
It's one more than I did.
Exactly. It's one more than, like 95% of the bands in the world will ever have.
Mm-hmm.
And hey, I mean, he's mostly known for playing, the drunk, abusive, brother-in-law. Well, I mean, what have you been in? What are you going to be known for? I mean, that's good for him.
He found a role, and he stuck it, and he the thing is, it's a memorable one. Like,
oh yeah,
anyone who knows the Rocky movies knows Paulie. Like, it's not like he's a bit character you can easily forget. He is a foundational part of the main character's makeup, and what brought him to the my favorite scene with Paulie is actually at the beginning of Rocky 3. After the montage of him doing his title defenses, and Rocky you basically see Paulie drunk stumbling through this video game. Again, this is 1983, so video games are just becoming a thing. So he's stumbling through this arcade, drunk out of his mind. He finds this Rocky pinball game, and he throws, just angry, just throws this bottle, and breaks it. And so Rocky comes and busts him out of jail, or not busts him out of jail, but bails. Bails him. And they're walking back to the car, and he's just berating Rocky every step of the way. Just and it's all like steeped in jealousy, and it turns into this whole thing where he goes to fight. And I love this part because Rocky just throws up the defense. Like, Paulie's just swinging, and Rocky's just blocking. And finally, he gets done, and he's exhausted. He just looks at him. He's like, "Can I get a job?"
Yeah.
Well, and then Stallone is just like, "All you have to do is ask."
Yeah. Remember back in the first movie where where they're in the meatpacking plant, and Paulie is giving Rocky his hard time, and that's the first time that Rocky starts beating on the side of meat, and you see Paulie just like go from like all puffed up to like, this guy could hurt me if he really, really wanted to.
Yep,
he could end me, and because he's been out collecting on the docks, he knows people who could get rid of me after he ended me.
Yes.
As a favor, they'd probably do it. Like, oh, this guy, I'm glad to do this. He was a pain in the ass. But then they come back, and he sets up the TV interview for him, and Paulie's obviously hammered like early in the morning.
Yeah.
And he's arguing back and forth with Rocky, and then he just leans in. He's like, "I think my sister really likes you." And you see Rocky just like backing up from his breath because he's like, just the wave of Four Roses and bourbon and residual cigar smoke just wafting over him, just like, oh God.
Yep.
And I don't always just appreciated that. Like, Paulie is like this guy who, like in that scene, like he is just an a-hole, but then all of a sudden he shifts gear on a dime.
But then he has these memorable parts, like at the end of Rocky 3. It's again, it's part about it's about the character growth, right? There's a lot that happens between him and Apollo Creed in Rocky 3. Some of it gets a little racially based.
Oh God, yes.
And at the very
stuff
end,
that hasn't aged well whatsoever.
No. And at the very end, Apollo giving him that kiss on the cheek when Rocky's, finally he's locked in and he's doing what he trained to do. And then the line that I love is Apollo's getting upset with Rocky, and Paulie's like, no, he's not getting killed, he's getting mad.
Yeah.
It's like, I've seen this before.
Well, what was it? Was it 2 or 3 where he's like, if I could just unzip myself and be someone else, I'd want to be you. It's like those moments where you're like, my gosh.
That's 4, I think, because I think he's afraid. It's before he walks out to fight Drago because he thinks he's going to die. Like I think Paulie believes Rocky isn't going to make it out of this match, and so he tells him this really heartfelt, thing about who he wants to be, and it's him.
And it's like it's one of those things where you just realize how deeply flawed this guy is, and how in his own way he is not. It goes beyond flawed. Like, he is wounded. Like, this guy is just broken on a fundamental level, and can only grasp these moments every so often. And it's kind of beautiful that he manages to play this guy where you're like, I can't stand him, and yet in a weird way you're like, come on, Paulie, you can pull it together. I've seen you do it a couple times,
Yeah. Now I forget in 4.
Let's just not talk about his robot girlfriend in 4.
No,
can we just not talk
the
about
thing
that?
I'll talk about in 4 though is, and again, similar to Apollo giving him a kiss, it is hysterical, him and Duke's relationship during the fight, because they cut to him, and I forget if it's Duke doing it to Paulie or Paulie doing it to Duke, but one of them is taking the other's head and kind of doing this with it.
Yes.
And it's just hysterical. Like, they're just like so into what's going on, and oh my gosh, like, it's just, you know, like you said, I mean, even though he played the same guy in 6 different films, that's people who are fans of those films, that's one of the key characters they remember. And and he just did such a fantastic job with it. So it is even though he was kind of you know, killed off, if you will, in I think it was in not Rocky Balboa. What was the one after?
No, it was Creed.
It was in Creed,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, because when Adonis goes to stay at Rocky's house, he stays in Paulie's room.
Yep.
and he still has all his girly mags there.
That's right. I forgot about that.
And I think the line is like, Adonis is like, "Yo, Paulie,"
Yeah.
something like that. Which in a way, I'm like, you know what? I'm sure, even though Burt's like, I would have really liked to have been in that flick, but he probably was like, you know what? That's about right for the character.
Absolutely. Well,
go into his room and there's a beer sign and there's a stack of girly magazines. Like, that's Paulie.
It's probably a couple bottles of bourbon laying around somewhere. So
empty. 4 Roses, little flasks. Yeah,
that's right. So we raise a glass to Burt Young. Thank you for the memories. Thank you for playing such a iconic character, and for basically teaching us all how not to behave.
Yes, he's the
do is ask.
The goofus in the Goofus and Gallant examples. Yes.
Oh, and that, my friends, is your week in geek.
Well, thank you, sir, for sleuthing and putting all that together. It is certainly well appreciated. And now we move on to our main event, the main subject at hand, which kind of came about for me because as I was on the YouTubes, as I want to do from time to time, I came across a clip of the opening of, it was like Triple H returns at SmackDown, and I'm like, oh my gosh, please tell me Paul is not going to try and make a comeback. Please, for the love of all that's holy.
Not after the heart thing. He's pretty clear. I am not wrestling again. So.
I know, but then again, Ric Flair has had about 18 retirement matches, and he almost died in the last one.
Ironically, Triple H didn't have a retirement match.
Yeah,
that's what I find so interesting about him. He is so atypical from every other wrestler. Like he had a great run, had that horrific health thing that he went through, comes back, and wisely is just like, I'm done. I've done it all, and he didn't have to have a retirement match to call it. It was just done.
Well, it had been a while since he had been active in the ring too.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's not like it was right out of nowhere. I mean, he kind of been for a while, and I wonder if there was any itch for him to be like, it would be nice one more time, or if he was just like, maybe it's over.
I think he kind of gets his jollies now from seeing the youngins get out there and perform. He seems like he's like super into the whole. Just building up the next generation, and that all started with him. I mean, he had this whole NXT thing from back in the early 2010s that he wanted to get rolling, and they even had plans, and these plans may continue now because they basically pumped the brakes. We'll get into that with Vince. But he had this whole idea of having NXT Europe, NXT Asia, NXT South Pacific or something like that. I mean, he wanted to make it a geographic, like almost turn it into the territory system, but globally, and run it that way. And so I think his juice now is from, how is this business going to continue and thrive, and how are the next generation and the generation beyond going to become, superstars.
Yeah. So anyway, back to this video. I saw the video and I was like, I click on it, and as it starts, I remember, I'm like, oh yeah, the articles have been coming out that Triple H, Paul Levesque, is now in sole control of WWE Creative, which he's been the head of WWE Creative essentially since Vince retired.
Yeah.
Reed went scurrying away like a rat off a ship because all of a sudden all of his payola scheme to bury all of his sexual assaults or whatever hush money came about. He was head of creative then. and technically has not lost that title. But when Vince came back, he started getting his grubby little mustachioed paws in everything, and he wasn't so much in head of control. And now that TKO has taken over and Vince actually has a boss, which Vince has never had. Vince has not had a boss since Vince
Papa.
Sr.
Yeah.
And even then, I mean, he bought him out. So now Vince has been basically relegated, if you will, to the more business aspect of it. And Paul Levesque is now solely in charge of WWE creative. No interference from Vince. No calls on, an hour before showtime to like, hey, change this whole thing. So it's season premiere for SmackDown, and they open the show by welcoming not Paul Levesque, WWE head of creative, welcoming the Game, Triple H. And he comes out to, and this is, I texted the man they call Tim, like, there is absolutely no way this is a coincidence.
No.
Man's had like 4 or 5 different entrance themes. He comes out to King of Kings, prominently featuring the line, bow down to the king. And he comes out with the biggest bleep-eating grin you can possibly imagine. It just stands there and soaks it in. I'm like, that is a man who is basically coming out and saying, I am now in charge. Yep. I have done what nobody else is. His kids couldn't even wrest control away from him, and I did it. Like, might be his biggest win of all time. Forget all the title wins.
Absolutely.
This is the biggest Triple H win ever. And I was like, this is beautiful. And at the same time, like, it's a little petty. And then a second later, I'm like, I totally would do that. I totally would. If that was me. Are you kidding me? After all the crap he's had to deal with Vince over these years, I would do that in a heartbeat. I would have been dancing. That's the only difference. He actually played it down a little.
You'd be doing the old Irish jig where you jump up and click your heel. Actually, I'm sorry.
I'd be like Becky Lynch and R-Truth together.
R-Truth.
Oh yeah,
there it is. There it is. Now, the funny thing is, about 10 minutes later during the promo segment that happens, Triple H does the funniest thing, which is when Dom is in the ring and the crowd is booing him incessantly, he actually hands him another mic, acting like the mic he has isn't working. Here, I think this one's better. And then he starts talking and the whole place just goes absolutely insane and you cannot hear Dom say a word. It is absolutely hysterical. But I watched that video too. I 100% agree. There was definitely a little stank on that one, and definitely with the grin that he had, because he is in control. And part of the articles that we'll have in the show notes really kind of a couple of them I think kind of call out too is he took over in summer of 2022. And just the turnaround that he's done to the product in that short period of time has been just incredible. He talked about this. I mentioned this in our last episode, but he talked about this during the Fastlane press conference after the event, where he talks about LA Knight, and he's like, this was a guy who, and he didn't say it this way, but for contextual, I think this was a Vince idea that he got repackaged as this Max Dupree, and he had this model
as a
manager. He was a manager, and now he is like the hottest wrestler right now in the company. And his whole thing is, 12 months ago, that's what he was doing. It speaks a lot to the creative that he has been fostering, that they could take a guy who was put into that position, plug him back into his old gimmick, who I probably was just going to be a mid-carder, and then strap a rocket to him when they start to realize that, this guy's getting a significant reaction compared to, a lot of their top-tier stars and their mid-carders. So we probably want to jump on this, Whereas in the Vince era, and we saw this with Rey Mysterio, we saw this with Daniel Bryan. In the Vince era, if his guy wasn't, if Roman Reigns is getting booed out of the place, you know what we're going to do? We're going to give him more Roman Reigns, because they're going to follow me, draw me money.
It's Roman Reigns Raw. It's going to be 3 hours worth of Roman Reigns.
Honest to God, most of Roman's heat, when you look back at it, really had nothing to do with Roman. And I'm not saying that because he wasn't a good performer. I think it had to do with the fact that he was always up against a talent that the fans wanted to see go over, and a lot of the fan base with the internet is wise to what goes on in the business. and they know that Vince is behind that, and he's going to shove his guy. They know Roman was Vince's guy.
Oh,
and
yeah.
And this is when he was supposed to be a baby face. That's the funny part. He was supposed to be the good. Vince brought The Rock out at the end of Royal Rumble to put some shine on Roman, and that didn't even work.
Oh no! And they booed him, and you actually saw Rock take a couple steps away from I don't.
He was like what pile of poo did I just walk into?
it was like if herpes became airborne, he was sidestepping him that quick, It was,
oh my gosh.
It was ridiculous. But yeah, and so of course,
always with the herpes.
Always with hey, once it's there, it's you gotta especially if Roman Reigns herpes, that's like simplex 38.
At least not X-Pac herpes, but anyways.
That's actually a real thing. That's actually in medical books. And that is airborne. That actually is the one thing you can catch from a toilet seat. So if you see Sean Waltman coming out of a bathroom, just go find another one.
I almost spewed Pellegrino everywhere. Good God Almighty! Oh wow, that was funny.
So yeah, that was kind of the genesis of the idea of talking about this, because I think it is very interesting just how different the product became almost immediately after Vince left. Like things started changing very quickly.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was very obvious that Triple H was in charge, and that's because we had a long period of time, and you can talk about this more often, but more so than I can, because you were an avid NXT watcher, or at least you were keeping tabs on it when Triple H was running that. And as you had told me before, in many ways, people were actually talking about it as being better than either of the two flagship shows under Triple H's direction. So, I mean, there was this kind of body of work that when he started doing stuff on the main roster, people were like, I recognize this. And then of course there was talks about how the morale in the locker room was better. People were happier. There was a lot of talent that had been fired and released that was brought back. Some of which, did well, some of which kind of, but hey, they can't all be winners.
Nope. But definitely talent that got let go because Vince had one vision and Triple H has a different one. Bronson Reed, who I don't follow very closely. I mean, he's a real big guy, but I think he was getting pushed at the time. He got brought up to the main roster. He was going to get a push. And then, Vince kind of interjected in, and he ended up getting released, I think in 2020, like end of 2021. As soon as Triple H came back, Bronson Reed was one of the guys that got brought back, and now I think he's in a feud right now with Gunther, who has that record-breaking IC title reign right now. So I mean, and that was the other thing, is like it became very clear when Gunther won the IC title, which I think was around that summer 2022 timeframe. They started elevating and putting some shine on kind of the mid-card titles, the United States Championship and the Intercontinental Championship. The announcers, because Vince wasn't in their ear telling them what to say, were able to talk more organically about the history of the belt, what that belt means from the perspective of being kind of the workman's belt, really starting to like build up what this thing is, so that it was almost like, they could do main events with that as a title match, and it actually meant something, as opposed to being some one-off thing that happened as the curtain jerker, So, so that was a real interesting kind of development that happened when he took over.
Yeah. And I think it's very interesting just in general too, just the way that, okay, let me say this. The thing that was in talking about, like a guy like Bronson Reed, about other talent that came from NXT under Triple H and then came to the main roster, is in many cases the jarring repackaging that would happen going from NXT to the main roster, because if it ain't Vince's idea, it can't be any good. Right. So all these guys who got over, it'd be almost like, saying like, oh, this guy is a great first baseman all through, single A all the way up to triple A, makes the main roster for the major league club. And they're like, hey, guess what? You're a catcher now. Say what? Or, hey, we're going to put you in center field.
Yep.
What? I've never done that. Well, too bad, pal. This is what you're doing now. And then, saying, well, look at them. They failed.
Yeah.
Well, you took what was working And instead of just like assuming that, it's almost like Vince, again, you have to apply logic here. And we all know that Vince isn't logical. So, it was like trying to assume that, well, NXT watchers never watch the main roster show and vice versa. So that it's like, well, why wouldn't they like that? And I think that had to have been somewhat frustrating for Triple H to watch here, I'm gifting you talent. I am building these guys up, these guys and gals. Cause that's also, the women's revolution, the main event women's wrestlers that you're seeing right now all came up under Triple H on NXT.
Yeah.
They made their bones, and then I'm gifting this to you. Like, it's on a silver platter, and you're just meddling with it. Like, just take it and run. I've given you the baton. You don't need to bedazzle it.
Right.
Right. So anyways, it's very interesting to me how this has played out, but also where it's going to go.
Yeah. Which
you're probably much more qualified to talk about that, even though I've just been blabbing.
Yeah. And, I think we touched on, you mentioned, so Vince's boss, Ari Emanuel, basically over the last couple of weeks, there were just, I kept seeing some stories around that he was kind of the driving force behind Vince not being involved in creative. I think he's quoted as saying that, he's a firm believer that people who are, commissioned to do certain jobs need to be allowed to do those jobs. And, basically the subtext behind that is Vince is not going to be booking from the shadows, basically, which exactly is what we don't need. The CageSideSeats.com article, I had to pull this out. One commenter on the article, I love this. Vince got worked into a shoot.
Yeah.
which is exactly true. They put this happy face on the relationship. I have no insights into what's going on behind the scenes. They want to let, I think you included a quote saying, one of TKO's greatest assets, given his institutional knowledge of the business, is Vince. That they want him to focus on, basically getting kind of the best deal for WWE in terms of network packaging and that sort of thing. It's very business kind of related. It's not involved at all with the actual product, more just selling the product that basically Triple H is driving. Which
makes so much sense.
Which does.
Makes so much sense. Because we know in the past, 10 years or so, you take the WWE network, everything that they've done up to now, the TV deals they've gotten, which are ridiculous.
Yeah.
You would think that they're making attitude era numbers, which they're not. Nobody is. But the sheer amount of money coming in from just the TV contracts in a world where streaming is king, and you're still making this money off of TV contracts, plus you have your own network that then you sell to a network to put on this streaming app, and you're still making money off of that.
Yep.
Holy crap. Yes, it makes so much sense to be like, Vince, you obviously know how to draw money when it comes to the TV execs. Just go do that.
Yeah.
Get your hands out of creative. But of course, Vince is a megalomaniac, narcissist, sociopath. So we all know that wasn't going to happen unless somebody's like, hey, by the way, you're not allowed to do this anymore. And I can say that now because I am your boss.
Yeah. Well, and let's we not forget too, WWE Network was ahead of the curve when it came to streaming. They went to streaming before streaming was a popular thing. And a lot of people thought this was going to hose them in the long run, because it's like you're moving away from pay-per-view, which was your cash cow.
Yep.
And you're moving to this model that's unproven. And what does that mean for talent now? How are they getting paid? Because now the revenue model totally changes. So no, they were very much ahead of the curve.
Well, and even go back further than that, the fact that Vince essentially bought out WCW for their library. What forethought is that? Because he had to have known on some level that most of the big names weren't going to come over, because they already had the contracts that they're just going to sit on their duffs. They're going to get guaranteed money anyways. They ain't coming. You're not going to really run that show.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I forget what it was that they paid for, but it was ridiculously low to own all of the WCW archives. Plus, going back to, I think WCW then owned a lot of the other promotions, like going back to like Crockett and all that stuff, just the tape library, and then buying ECW's tape library.
Yep.
And having this just backlog of content that then when you go to put a network together, when you go to put together streaming, well, look at everything we've got here for you. You want something to binge? How about like 30 years of WCW Crockett Productions NWA matches?
Yep.
Have fun with that. What is it? Like 12 seasons of Friends? Amateurs, you know. So I mean, business acumen. I mean, it's tough to deny. Like the dude knows how to turn a profit for sure.
Right. And I think it's great there's someone there who's saying, good, go focus on that then. You don't need to have input into the creative. And you mentioned NXT, and I just want to touch on this real quick, but jump ahead to now and what Triple H is doing. Like I distinctly remember, and this was a rare thing for me because, you know, wrestling events as a whole was just kind of like, you know, a cherry on the sundae. So if I had things going on, I wouldn't really entertain watching it, you know, because it's like I had more important stuff to do. But I distinctly remember I was coming back from we were driving back from a trip, and I think NXT was doing an event in Osaka, Japan, and so it was airing, you know, at a weird time. It was like early in the morning, and we were kind of driving overnight coming in, so I was like wide awake, and I think it like started like 7 or 8 o'clock in the morning Central Time. And I remember, I think it was like, I think it was Brock Lesnar versus Kevin Owens, I think, or something like, it was some crazy, but the fact that Triple H had the forethought or the vision to not just keep everything pigeonholed within America, to actually try to go and embrace, you know, like AJ Styles, who was huge in Japan when he was part of Bullet Club and that was really a lot of the momentum he gained that brought him into WWE and as the character that he was, you know, comes out in kind of as much of the Bullet Club garb as he can without, you know, violating copyright, with Gallows and Anderson, because that they all ran around that whole area, you know, for a long time. Was just so cool. You know, it was just such a neat thing to see that he was kind of embracing. Oh no, I'm sorry. I think it was Finn Balor versus Kevin Owens for the NXT championship. And then,
I was gonna say, I couldn't imagine Lesnar being in there.
Lesnar made an appearance and threw someone around. I can't think who it was. It might've been one of the New Day, like Big E or Kofi or something like that. But
I would bet it was Kofi.
It was probably Kofi now that I'm thinking about it. But no, I mean, but it was just like that event had such a different feel to it. I was excited to see it. I was really excited about the NXT product at that time. I mean, Sami Zayn and Shinsuke Nakamura were having just incredible matches together. I mean, it was just like, it was a product that was different from the roster, from the main roster and what you saw on Raw and SmackDown. It wasn't overproduced. It felt very organic. It reminded me a lot of WCW back in the day. I mean, as popular as WWE was, WCW had sometimes the better action, you know. I mean,
especially like before you get to like Monday Night Wars territory, like you're talking about like Dusty and, you know,
absolutely.
Ric
You see
Flair.
Arn Anderson in a one-on-one match. I mean, no title on the line or anything. I was mesmerized by Arn Anderson. He was so freaking good in the ring, and he's such an underappreciated talent, you know, because he was always kind of in Flair's, you know, vicinity. That you know, you look at him just as a bit player, but my God, Arn Anderson and Tully Blanchard, they were an absolute pleasure to watch wrestle, and were just amazing talents.
Well, he reminds me of a little bit of how Paul Heyman described Sandman once, like just a tough guy who's looking for a fight.
Yeah.
That's that kind of
like, you don't want to mess with this guy. Like,
no,
Anderson legitimately, like, he puts the fear of God in you with his stare. You know what I mean? He just looks into the camera. You're like, oh,
yeah. He looks like your 8th grade shop teacher, but he might kill you.
Oh my God! And there's a saw right over there.
Except he has all his fingers. That's a dead giveaway.
Fair enough.
You know.
But the other point you made, which is extremely true, and I think was really exemplified by the return of Cody Rhodes to WWE, is, as you said, there isn't this need to force them into some sort of WWE made product or music or style. It's when he came back with the music he used in AEW. He came back with the iconography of the American Nightmare. He came back as Cody Rhodes, and the crowd went crazy because no one ever thought they would see that version of Cody Rhodes in WWE.
Yeah.
And because of the fact that he was given that latitude and that ability to look and function as himself, and to have this great story, which I think Triple H is 100%, vested in, with him on this journey to achieve what Dusty never could do.
Yeah.
Is right up the alley of the fabric of what, I don't know Triple H personally, obviously, but when you see what he does creatively, it seems like it's right in the wheelhouse of what he likes. It's historical. Mm-hmm. There's depth to it. You can build on top of it. In fact, they're probably, you and I were at just beside ourselves after WrestleMania when he lost.
Yeah.
And we talked a little bit about maybe they're paying homage to Dusty by doing kind of a Dusty long run to get to that point where he's got to fight his way every single step of the way.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think on that episode you were talking about where Triple H came back, at the end of that episode, you had, Cody and Jay facing off against Solo and Jimmy. And then you see Roman walk in, and my God, when Roman and Cody were like face to face, damn, did that have a big fight feel to it.
Mm-hmm.
Just staring at each other.
Yeah.
Like, that's it. And it's like, that's genius.
Yeah.
And yet you and I were like, what were they thinking?
Well, again, because we're so conditioned to like Vince that you're just used to like, oh, this is going to get screwed up.
Here we go again.
Yeah.
Right. All right. So, we talked a little bit about Cody. We'll come back to him in a minute. But, I kind of listed out some other ways Triple H's leadership has been impacting the product. What can be said about the Bloodline storyline over the course of last year to this year with Sami Zayn? Holy. A couple days ago, I just happened to do a playback of the chair shot heard around the world at Royal Rumble when Sammy hauled off and made the turn and whacked Roman.
Mm-hmm.
My God, you and I both were watching that. We're like, what the heck? The crowd was insane.
Well, the thing was they teased it so long.
Yes.
Like that was, and it's tough to describe because I don't want to just seem like I'm trying to blow sunshine up Triple H's butt here on this one, because I'm not. I just feel like they managed to tease it in a way that didn't feel as manufactured. Like you could actually rationalize yourself into why it wouldn't have happened then, even though you're like, well, it could have. Then you're like, well, okay, I guess I understand, blah, blah. Whereas before, it always felt manufactured. Like you almost felt like there was an invisible person, like, oh, wait a minute, you got trying to keep the two sides separated sort of thing.
Yeah.
And it felt, I guess the way I would describe it is the storytelling feels a bit more organic.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's just kind of naturally progressing in the same way that, here, let's throw another metaphor in there. The idea of like when you're sculpting, the idea is, I forget who it was that said this, but it's like, when I sculpt, I just try to take away all the pieces that aren't the thing.
Yeah.
And that it's like, it's there. You just have to take these pieces away. And it feels like the story is it's kind of just going along and they're guiding it rather than actively like, no, did that. It's not as clunky,
Yep, absolutely. And and a lot of it's the performers too. I mean,
oh, totally.
Both Zayn and Roman Reigns, just with the facials and everything that just kind of led up to, the promos, the way the story was told, the slow burn for it, Sammy earning his way into the bloodline, and then, things just slowly falling apart because of Roman's, narcissistic behavior, was just fantastic. And then, that kind of leads into, this past year's WrestleMania, which we just talked about, this match that everyone thought Cody was going to win. He loses. Yes, sir.
Well, can I just pause there? Because I think you brought up something that's kind of interesting, because to me, it's bringing up the idea that the the performers themselves have more input.
Mhm.
Or are helping to make that, and it seem like they have a little bit. It's not just being dictated; that it feels like more natural, which to me would assume that it's coming from the performers.
Yes,
which I think is very interesting that we see that under Triple H.
It's not overproduced.
When that was a hallmark of when the Attitude Era came about, because there was that infamous thing of, after Bret Hart had left and Vince kind of talking to the roster about maybe time has passed me by and all this. And slowly but surely, well, not really slowly, but in short order, a lot of the old gimmicks kind of disappeared.
Mm-hmm.
And you saw a lot of the performers taking on characters that were really just their own personality amped up in certain areas to 11.
Right.
And the fact that worked so well for Vince, and then he went away from it and got back to hey, dance for me, puppets, dance. Right. And it took someone like Triple H, who was there.
Yeah.
And who went from Hunter Hearst Helmsley, blue blood from frickin' Greenwich, Connecticut or whatever, to Triple H.
Yep.
It kind of takes him going like, well, Vince, how do you not see this?
Yeah.
I just find that very interesting that this what was a turned into like a good thing for Vince turned out to be an Achilles heel for him.
Absolutely. And I mean, a lot of the reaction that led to the bloodline being so, that storyline being so popular and so, with the fans so invested in it, a lot of that falls to, I mean, all of them, Jay, Jimmy, Sammy, I mean, the Wise Man, Roman, I mean, and Solo, like all of them play their part very, very well. And, it may seem, I don't want to say it seems like it's overplayed. I think they're trying to tread water to WrestleMania, where I think it's all going to implode at that point. I don't
necessarily get the feeling they're treading water. Like they're it's like active. They're not sitting in one spot. They're like, they're hovering around one area, but they're actively swimming. Like there's stuff going on, even though they're kind of like, okay, well, we don't want to get too far away from the island of relevancy.
Yeah.
But we can kind of go do a couple of laps around it and see what else we find,
There's a difference building up to the climax of watching them, seeing this unit that's always been a unit start to implode.
Oh, totally.
To now they've imploded.
Mm-hmm.
And now it's like, okay, we're weaving in like LA Knight now into challenging Roman. And then we're going to weave this person into challenging Roman, working up to, what I think inevitably is going to be Cody challenging him again at WrestleMania. And hopefully finally overcoming.
Speaking of which, did you see the bits from Heyman on SmackDown with LA Knight?
Oh, yeah. I did.
He was like, yeah.
Oh yeah. Playing right along with him. Oh, it's hysterical.
Right. And that line where LA Knight was like, I'll hit you so hard, I'll turn your hair back to gray or something.
That was fantastic.
I kind of wonder if there was any foreknowledge of that, because I could see a little bit of Heyman like almost like, oh, really? We're gonna go there, huh?
That's pretty good.
All right, fine. All right, that's good. That'll draw. Okay,
that's pretty good. We talked a little bit about, with Cody and Reigns, just that slow burn, storytelling, to Rhodes eventually breaking Reigns' streak, because that's going to be a huge thing when he does that. I think most recently after WrestleMania, you and I, of course, were mystified by this, and that was kind of the like I think that was, I don't want to say the peak, but that was a very popular thought time to say Vince is in charge, because only he would screw something up like this,
Yeah.
And we see Cody taking on Brock, and like, what the hell are they thinking? And then that trilogy of matches turns into probably one of the best things that Cody could have gone through, because it was Cody wins one by the skin of his teeth, Brock dominates him the second one, and then Cody definitively defeats him and earns his respect. And we already talked, I mean, we did a whole episode about just that SummerSlam match, that third match, and just how good that was, because of the way that story was being told, and the fact that Brock, whether it's fact or fiction, that none of them expected him to put his hand out and shake his hand like that. I mean, that was a huge deal, because it's a huge deal because Brock never does it. It wouldn't have meant anything if he had always done that. But this was the first time we've ever seen him do something like that. And it makes it that much more special and interesting. So again, just, seeing, like you said, seeing everyone being able to have some creative input and an ability to change things. Main event Jey Uso was something I don't think anyone like any of us saw coming, you know, with him coming into his own and the way that they kind of framed that and the way, again, the bloodline story played out to position him well, where he was a believable contender, you know, to take down Roman, and simply didn't because of, you know, interference. Well, actually interference and a turtle-like pace that put Uncle Todd to the test when he was watching it.
Made me question my entire life. Maybe question existence itself.
Actually, sir, I will send you the link, but go to cagesideseats.com. Someone, one of their columnists wrote a column saying, because LA Knight's challenging Roman Reigns at Crown Jewel, this match with Roman Reigns has to take on a different tone. And when you read the column, it's basically saying, you know, Roman's matches have this pattern to it, which we've talked about. And it's like LA Knight has got to come in like a house of fire. It's got to be this relentless, I don't back down. So like it has to be different. And one thing I really thought was kind of cool was do something different. Have Knight just start taking the fight to him. Like the first 5 to 7 minutes is just Knight just dominating him. You know, like we've never seen that. And it speaks so well to what he just like did in his promo with Heyman, you know.
How about we actually have Roman Reigns, you know, have a wrestling match?
No, that's true too.
I mean, it's a revolutionary idea, but I think I'm ready. I think I'm ready for it to actually see, like, you know, a suplex, maybe
catch as catch can, yeah,
some
submission,
sort of
sharpshooter,
anything besides like, you know, a punch every 5 minutes is that he wanders around the ring, like,
I know, talking
something,
smack. Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
I get, like, and you know, he does well with that, but it's like, how about some actual wrestling?
Yeah.
Because we've seen enough of that other match.
Yep.
And it's boring.
Yep.
The only way it wasn't boring was when you had Sami Zayn. That's because you had a crowd that was so like nuclear hot that, you know, you and I could have been out there wrestling and it would have been dynamite, you know? So anyways.
Absolutely. What else? The Judgment Day's rise to prominence.
Oh my gosh.
What started as Edge's faction that he eventually got, you know, kind of pushed out of is now this whole other thing where you've got Rhea Ripley.
Which was then Finn Balor's faction, which
now is Mommy's faction.
Exactly.
Rhea Ripley is the leader. You have Finn, you have Damian Priest, and you have Dom.
Oh my gosh.
And you know, how they just kind of came into, you know, Damian with Money in the Bank, then they win the tag belts. Dom wins a North American title. She is the world champion for women. Was you know, just the way that they've and just the interactions they have. I mean, going back to that promo back in the spring when Heyman comes by to cut a deal with the Judgment Day. And he's like, oh, what'd you think of the Bloodline and what they did? And Finn Balor's like, eh. He's like, eh? What do you mean, eh?
Yeah. Then he call Roman Reigns.
Yeah,
he said, eh.
And then he walks off camera. He's like, call Roman Reigns. He said, eh.
But it's true. Like, but understanding, like, okay, Finn Balor, and you could see them trying out Finn Balor.
Yeah.
And then they kind of went to, oh my God, you just said his name. Big, tall dude, Archer of Infamy.
Damian Priest.
Damian Priest.
Yep.
How could I forget that name? And then it seemed like it was kind of like veering towards like he's the one in charge.
Yep.
And then finally realizing like, no, Rhea Ripley is the show here.
Mm-hmm.
Like she is the money draw. People are just fascinated by her. And that's taking out the Instagram factor because, oh my gosh, people are fracking nuts for Rhea on Instagram.
Yeah.
It's kind of scary.
It is. It is.
But I mean,
and Dom is a heat magnet. Dom is a heat magnet. Oh my gosh,
yes.
He just starts talking and people, and the whole place lights up. I mean, it's incredible.
It's almost like a new category of heat.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know that there's ever been anything quite like this. It's not go away heat. It's not X-Pac heat.
Mm-hmm.
There is just this, it's like a sheer visceral vitriol that just comes out of people where they're like, I want that guy.
We want to see you get your tail kicked. Yeah. We want to see you get your tail kicked.
But he's not gonna, because he's got mommy in his corner.
That's right.
And quite honestly, Mommy can take out damn near anybody.
Yeah.
I mean, sheesh.
Yeah, she is. They are doing a great job elevating her and just continuing to make her look like a complete badass.
And they should,
in terms of a leader of that group as well as in the ring with the ladies. So
she's got so much charisma. It's just like it's just oozing.
Yeah.
Out of every pore. Like I just watching her around like the ring when there's a match going on is fascinating. In the same way that watching Heyman is fascinating.
Yep.
Except that like that she could also tear someone up.
Yep.
And
now what was really interesting is when Money in the Bank happened, there was the fan base went apoplectic when LA Knight did not win Money in the Bank. And they're like, what do they do? Here we go. They're screwing up another talent who's, on the rise. Last week, CagesideSeats.com, look it up. There was an article saying, I think something to the effect of, Damian Priest winning or LA Knight not winning Money in the Bank was the right call.
Mm-hmm.
Like the fact that and again, this goes back to the Cody thing at WrestleMania. It goes back to this decision. They don't look like good moves on the surface because everyone's thinking so short term in the near term of what they would want to see. And then with time, you see the wisdom behind what they do. Damian Priest is going to be made in a different way through using that. LA Knight didn't need it. He had the heat based on who he was. They didn't need to give him Money in the Bank to somehow crown him champion. They're going to use him as, Roman's challenger. Maybe he ends up being someone who takes out Sami Zayn, or sorry, not Sami Zayn. Sorry, takes out Seth Rollins. Because he's not going to beat Roman Reigns. They're going to keep the title on Roman at least to WrestleMania.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe he's someone who takes down, like, let's say Seth Rollins, right? Then you have Damian Priest who might cash like this is the thing, like, and this is a point I have later on, is all the options that exist right now around the world championships they have is just fascinating because they can do so many different things.
Oh yeah.
It isn't a prescriptive, it's only these four guys. It could be several individuals that could, have a run or something like that. So no, I mean, it's just incredible.
In that way, who it reminds me of? This reminds me of prime Bill Belichick and the Patriots.
Yeah.
Back when you're dealing about, oh my gosh, I can't believe they traded Richard Seymour to the Oakland Raiders.
Bingo.
I can't believe they traded I forget his name. Gosh, he was an offensive guard, and apparently I just tried to Google it.
Matt
apparently
Light?
No, because Matt Light was a
center?
He was a tackle.
Oh, he's a tackle. Okay.
He was a guard, and he had a mean streak. And he was a really good player for them. And they traded him to the Buccaneers. This is like 10 years ago or so. And people were like, oh my gosh, including me. Like, what are you doing? And then he does nothing for the Buccaneers.
Yeah.
And the Patriots keep on rolling. It's the same sort of thing now. Like, you question the move at the moment. And then later on, you're like, oh, guess that worked out.
Yep.
And the fact is,
nothing.
Like, it's not that it's going to work out all the time.
Yeah.
It just works out more often than not, which is all you really need it to do.
Yeah.
Which was kind of fundamentally, if you want to get down to like the Patriots' philosophy in terms of like salary cap, player moves, contracts, all that. It wasn't that we are going to do we're going to have a certain amount here. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. Ultimately, what it came down to is we're just going to do less stupid crap than everyone else. And if we do less stupid crap than everyone else, guess what? We're ahead.
Yep.
Because everyone else does really dumb things. If we just do fewer dumb things, we look great. We're in a great position, and we have options like they do now with storylines. Like, you have room under the salary cap. You have players that you can trade. You have picks that you can move. You're just creating options. And that is what Triple H is doing right now. Like, he can go any which direction with half of the stuff that he's got going right now. And it's exciting because you really can't guess. And it goes back to what he was doing with NXT. Like, you just try and get more talent so that it's not the same 2 or 3 people all the time.
Right.
It could be, hey, we can move this person into their orbit now, and then this person can kind of go do this.
Yep.
It's remarkable.
Yeah. And you see it happening right now with Sami Zayn. Like, Jey Uso I talked about how SmackDown was owed a draft or owed a talent based on Jay being moved to Raw. Well, that talent ends up being Kevin Owens. So now Sammy doesn't have his best friend who he was tagging with, and he now, his promos are now kind of around, well, this is all Jay's fault. So now he's starting to he hasn't become unhinged yet, but they're starting to go down that road where he's looking at what's going on, and it's like, why is this bad stuff always happening to me, sort of thing. And starting to go down kind of a heelish route where, Jay is, trying to deal with all of the repercussions of what he did as part of the bloodline. Like the fact that they even keep that detail in is phenomenal. Because he has this whole track record of screwing over a lot of people who don't trust him. So he's dealing with that. You have Cody, who, later on when he wins the title, does that now come back and, blow back on him? Because Sammy could come to him and say, you're the one that cut this deal with Jay, which led to me and Kevin breaking up. And look at you have the world title, and look at me. I got nothing. And you know what I mean? Like there's just all these different webs they can go down, all these different paths they can pursue if they want to with these characters. And then you have Damian Priest with Money in the Bank. You have LA Knight, who is going to win a title at some point of some significance because he is just too hot right now to not put a title on. So, I mean, there's just so many different options. And, I talked about that Japan pay-per-view, in May when they did Backlash, it was in Puerto Rico, and, that had such a unique feel to it. They brought back Carlito, who had been away for, over 10 years, but was a memorable superstar. The crowd went crazy for him. Bad Bunny was part of it. The fact that they do that sort of cross promoting with him, crowd goes nuts for him. I mean, phenomenal card. That was where Cody beat Brock for the first time, and no one could believe it. But again, all due to the fact that Triple H is willing to go to those more non-traditional places than the company was typically doing. They go and they, and I don't mean it's just the location, but I mean the booking and the way that they went about it. You know what I mean? Like that was different from what Vince would have done.
I wonder, because I don't know the intricacies of their scheduling, like how far out that was scheduled. But the point is well taken in terms of taking advantage of the situation. Yeah. Which is kind of what's been happening lately, is like, hey, let's take advantage of this. Let's take advantage of that, instead of just going, well, it isn't according to how I said it was going to be, so therefore everyone ignore it. Pretend it didn't happen. Which is very much a Vince thing, as just like I'm sure everybody for the past, several months has had to pretend like, no, Vince, the mustache looks great. Mustache looks great, Vince.
How did you like that close-up in that one? Like, I don't know if you looked at that one article where there was a close-up picture of Vince's pencil mustache, and you look at that and realize that thing is uneven. All get out.
It's like Mark Davis's barber. He's like he got his name to like trim up the cat turd that's underneath his nose. It's terrible. Terrible. It is freaking discount bin Walt Disney.
It is. It is awful. We've talked at length about LA Knight and the rocket strapped to his back, and how that's organic, how he's organically grown with the crowd. Again, wouldn't have happened under Vince. Gunther, we already talked about him with the IC title reign. They went ahead and broke Honky Tonk Man's record, so now he is the longest reigning IC champion of all time. I'm really curious what they're going to do with him, because I see him being a great foil for Cody if Cody continues on the baby face route, especially as champion, because Gunther is a force to be reckoned with. And I think he's going to be a phenomenal world champion. Like, they have a monster heel world champion who is not Brock Lesnar, who is just sitting right there waiting to be crowned. And they'll be able to do so in probably the most heartbreaking way, by having him break the guy that everyone loves. And so, his ascension has been fun to watch. We talked about the universal title options.
Or another thing you could do. Yeah. I mean, because you have the undisputed, blah, 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 universal championship. What about the belt that Rollins has right now? What if Gunther went after that instead, and then did almost the same as he did as with the Intercontinental Championship? Like,
absolutely,
this is the real world's championship, because this is the championship for wrestlers,
right? And Rollins is already down that road. Like, he is taking on all comers. He's trying to make that like a workman's world championship. He's defending it anywhere, anytime, anyone. And that's kind of my last point of, and it's not the final point, but it's just what I listed out of the positive impacts this has had is, my God, the revitalization of Shinsuke Nakamura with that whole feud with Seth Rollins. I watched that last man standing match. They found a way to make a last man standing match riveting, like with what they did in that match. I mean, he was so good. He was so vile as this heel going after a physically broken champion and making you believe like he was going to break him in the match. I mean, it was just so well done. And that would not have been a detail that Vince would have done. Vince would have gone with some sort of, standard, America versus, whatever sort of, I mean, that's just what he does. Like, he doesn't know anything else, because that's all he knows.
Yeah.
And so like just having that kind of attention to detail and having Nakamura be a heel with some depth, and the promos leading up to it, I mean, all of it was just so well done. So kudos to Triple H and the creative team. They've taken a product that you and I were ready to walk away from probably earlier this year after WrestleMania, once we thought Vince was really going to, take over and ruin everything, and turned it into something that, we've now kind of trickled in and watched a couple of the premium live events, and have, actually built some of our episodes around, because the matches are so damn good. We got to talk about them. But I want to ask you, sir, we've been gushing for the last, 45 minutes or so. Any missteps along the way that you would call out, or is it just too early to kind of identify it?
I think the fact that you don't have a great way to, that's not even a misstep, because that's just the way it is. Like, the one thing I could see being labeled a misstep that I look at is, like, you're doing the best that you can with the situation that you've been handed, and that is the fact that you have a top dog champion that is not a full-time worker, and that you don't have, you've spent so much time building up that it would be a shame just to get the belt off of him to have someone who's on TV every week. You know what I mean? Like, he's still over enough that even as a part-timer coming in every so often and not defending the championship that much, he's still drawing you a butt ton of money. So I think they've done a fairly good job of working around that. The fact that your top heel, your top champion, is only on TV every so often, and not even necessarily in an extraordinarily meaningful way. Yeah. But they've done, even in that, like, they've managed to make a little bit of chicken salad out of some chicken in order to make that work. I think you had like Logan Paul on there. I don't know if I can count that as a misstep, because even though I don't like the dude, I'm not his target demographic, and some of the matches he's had, and the fact that people hate him so badly, I mean, damn. But
it goes back to something you said when either WrestleMania or SummerSlam. I forget which event it was, but he wrestled. I think it was SummerSlam, because he wrestled Ricochet. But there was some match he was in. No, it might have been WrestleMania, because I think he faced off against Seth Rollins, and you were kind of like, how is a guy who is like, basically, I mean, he's not even a part-time wrestler. He's like a quarter-time wrestler.
Yeah.
Holding his own this way. And now rumors have it that he had a boxing or UFC match or whatever it was he had, and he called out Rey Mysterio and the US title, and rumors are kind of moving in a direction heavily that he's going to win the US title and hold it for a little bit. Does it denigrate some of that stuff? But to have a guy like on the one hand, I get why they're doing the cross marketing, right? Because they're trying to bring in another audience dimension that is tied to Logan Paul. They're trying to cross promote and broaden the product. But does it sully the product when you have a guy who is barely a part-timer coming in and going the distance with some of your quality guys, going the distance and winning and potentially beating I mean, Logan Paul's been in a main event with Roman Reigns and lost, but he took him, I wouldn't say took him the distance, but he made it a fight.
Yeah.
So is that kind of decision making a problem because you got people who aren't really, does it affect the reality of the WWE universe when you have someone come in like that?
The problem is that we've already crossed this bridge. Like it's not like whether we ought to cross the bridge or whether we ought to cross the bridge again. We are across the bridge and a ways away from the bridge. The bridge is barely even in sight now. There's been many instances of celebrities coming in, and I was not happy with the way that Rollins looked against this guy. But you're already in this business, and that's what it is.
Yeah.
I don't love it, but at the same time, I mean, it's not like he's got Karl Malone out there.
Yeah. It's
not like it's someone who can't wrestle. Like Logan Paul, for as much as I don't particularly like the idea of the guy being there, he can wrestle.
Yeah.
And not just like some high spots. Like the dude can work.
Yeah.
And he is a natural heat getter. As a heel, he's a natural. So I mean, there's worse things. Now, I mean, at least if you're doing this, you're doing it with someone with some innate talent who can go, as opposed to like how many schmucks have we seen in WWE through the years who you're like, oh my gosh, this is painful. At least it's not painful. Yeah. I'll give them that. Like at least they're working with someone, continuing to work with someone who gets some eyeballs and isn't stinking the show out.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, okay. Don't love it, but what they need to do is they need to get Taylor Swift to date someone in the WWE, and that'll be the effect that they want.
Yeah. I mean, what's funny is I don't have this issue when they have like Bad Bunny pop in once in a while, but I think what I rationalize around that is Bad Bunny comes in and he's someone who's just a one-off, kind of sort of talent who clearly respects the business. I mean, he does a phenomenal job when he's in the ring, but he's usually involved in like, a tag match or a match that doesn't have like real stakes to it. Whereas when you see I didn't fully agree with your point at the time. And I don't know that I'm still fully on board with it, but I was able to suspend reality at least to see Paul and Rollins have the match that they had based on the story they were telling. But I do reconcile or do recognize what you were saying, where what does that do to diminish Rollins though? You know what I mean? Like you have essentially, in Bobby Heenan's words, this ham and egger who comes in, who really only shows talent because he is a celebrity and he has to look good in order to be, kind of worthy of promotion. So no, I mean, seriously, but the thing about it, anyone else, like back in the 80s when you had the old jobbers, right?
Yeah.
What separates a Logan Paul from a jobber, right? I mean, he doesn't do this regularly.
No, but the fact is, like, there's no jobbers anymore.
Well, fair enough.
So that's a bygone era. The fact is, we're in an era now where, I mean, crap. Give me Logan Paul over Nia Jax. Nia Jax is a seasoned, trained professional wrestler.
Yeah.
Logan Paul has better matches than her. Let me find an apples to apples comparison in terms of guys. Roman Reigns. I will take a Logan Paul match over a Roman Reigns match if you're offering me like what Logan Paul can offer in the ring in terms of actual wrestling match, in terms of moveset, in terms of pacing, in terms of just being able to work with somebody and not getting just like punch kick and it takes a half hour for you to get like into second gear. As much as I don't love Logan Paul. I don't like the idea that he's doing it. But hell, his matches are more exciting than Roman Reigns. The only thing that makes Roman Reigns matches exciting are usually he has the title and the dude he's facing. Roman Reigns is boring as shite when it comes to wrestling right now. He doesn't wrestle. He punches, he kicks, you get a spear, and you get what else does he do?
Don't forget about the smack talk.
Yeah, whatever. You could have
world-class smack talk going on there.
I wouldn't put it that way. I don't even think he's that good. He's good, but he's not that good.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, quite honestly, it's not even John Cena's 5 moves of doom. Roman's got like 2.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry, but Logan Paul, right now, if you offer me one over the other, Logan Paul is a better worker than Roman Reigns.
Okay, I'm not
from what we have seen over the past couple of years.
But you've also argued, because of who he is, why is he putting up a fight against someone who does this regularly?
You're right, and the fact is, I also wonder that about Roman Reigns at this point. That's why I was so hard on the fact that the last couple of title defenses, like, how come nobody can beat this schmuck?
All right, we don't
He's
need
moving
to
so slow.
This episode isn't an adjudication of Logan Paul, although we should maybe have one, because clearly Uncle Todd has a.
I have feelings.
Has feelings, and they need to be vented. All right. Oh, there we go. Little free-range idiocy court on this one, folks.
Your Honor, the case before the bench today is Roman Reigns versus Logan Paul.
Not jabroni.
No, actually, I think I put up a pretty good defense for that. Now we got to go Roman Reigns, jabroni or not jabroni, as a worker.
Not jabroni.
Oh,
he can work. He can work.
Yeah, but when is he gonna?
Well, maybe that's one of Triple H's missteps. Ooh,
maybe.
Bongos.
Yeah, that's Triple H on bongos, actually. He's multi-talented. I'm telling you, the man's got rhythm.
Oh,
actually, who am I kidding? No, he doesn't. That's actually X-Pac.
Oh my gosh! All right,
but herpes gives him extra reflexes.
Let's wrap this up before we end up at 2 hours and 45 minutes of just us rambling on here. Any
How
other
is that
missteps?
different from any other show, sir? I'm just curious.
Because I am enforcing order. I'm trying to move it on.
Okay. Right. I honestly, I can't think of. Well, actually, no. I will say, I think bringing back Nia Jax is a huge mistake, unless your plan is to like injure half of the women's roster and collect insurance money. Maybe that's it. It's a scam. I don't know.
Could be. Could be.
The thing is, I haven't watched the product enough on a weekly basis. Show to show to really get into some of the minutia. I can only hit the high points. So I'm sure there are, because you don't bat 1,000, but nothing that's like so bad that you're like, oh dear God, I'm not watching this ever again.
It's a totally, I don't want to say it's a totally new product, but it is a different product.
Yes.
And that is a good thing. And just looking ahead, and this is less about, it is about Triple H, less about Triple H to some degree, because I don't know how much of this is in his control, but, a couple things in future looking, we already talked about kind of the payoff to Cody and to the Cody Reigns, kind of long simmering feud. I know a couple episodes ago, you made a case, adjudicated a case here in Idiot's Court on that Cody and Reigns should go for another year. That it may be another year of waiting, but that payoff is coming, and I think is something that will be finally closed out and resolved. Does CM Punk return? Now, there have been statements that they are not in negotiations with him at all, but that is exactly what you would want to say if you want to really surprise people at Survivor Series, which is emanating out of Chicago, Illinois.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and the fact is, like, it doesn't have to be. I mean, we are late October.
Mm-hmm.
When is Survivor Series? Is it still a relative? I know next month. Thanks, there, Sparky. Hang on, I'll look it up.
That's what you're asking.
Well, I was looking for more of a date.
November 19th. I'll throw it out there.
Is it November 25th? Thank you.
Close. By 6 days.
Oh my gosh.
By 6 days.
See, it was in this year. I told you.
I told you. It was in this decade.
I mean, quite honestly, do you need to, like, is there any hurry? Like, you could have him agree to show up.
NXT journey that you outlined 2 episodes ago.
Oh no, and I get it. What I'm saying is, like, does it matter what is happening today, October 23rd? There's a lot that can happen in a month.
Yeah.
I mean, a month ago, we thought Vince was pretty much a sure hand on the wheel and had this thing.
Yeah, fair enough.
A month before Vince retired, we're all like, ugh.
Yep.
And then all of a sudden, hush puppies. I got Jerry the King Lawler and Hush Money confused. Hush puppies.
I'm gonna start wrapping this up, man. He's getting all puppies on us here.
But yeah, no, you never know. So it still could happen. It still could happen. I'm holding out hope.
It can happen.
But again, the sun won't rise and set on that. If Triple H doesn't pull that off, there's so many other options.
Looking ahead, does the bloodline implode fully? What does that look like? And what happens in place of that? Because it's such, like, they are such an institution on SmackDown now. It's like you've got to figure out something else to kind of fill that void if they do end up going away.
I don't think they will.
It doesn't have to be a faction, but it has to be like,
I think you have to keep, you have to keep Roman and the Wise Man and Solo at least kind of together. Maybe Jimmy peels off, or maybe Solo peels off, but you got to keep some of that together until Roman finally loses the championship, so that he can really plummet to earth.
Mm-hmm.
That would really be the comeuppance that I think a lot of folks are looking for.
I agree. And then finally, I think a real test is going to be something, The Miz brought up when he was feuding with LA Knight, which is, does LA Knight have longevity with this run he's on right now?
Yeah.
All right. We'll take your word for it. Well, that's all I got. Anything else you want to touch on before we kind of wrap this bad boy up?
No, it's nice to see that, there's a sane hand on the wheel without a pencil-thin mustache.
Thank God.
Some cat turd just smeared across an upper lip.
All hail the king.
Nice.
Bow down to the king.
Are you ready to play the game?
That's right.
Oh, and it's good to hear Lemmy's voice again. It just is.
It is. Good
such a
Lemmy.
treasure.
Good old Lemmy.
Oh, anyways, I love how you have Dave Grohl at Lemmy's funeral, and then you also have Triple H.
Yeah.
And you know what? And if you know anything about Lemmy, it's like, yeah, it fits. Okay, yeah. Sure.
Basically. Well, I love the story that Triple H tells, though. When he talks about Lemmy, and it kind of made me laugh where he talks about him as a gentleman, where he's like, I walked in with Steph, and he had some topless ladies there, and he was just kind of in and he's like, oh. Like he shoos them out, and then he come back in, and they're all like dressed and proper and stuff like that. It's just like
that is one of the things. Like Lemmy, man, is everything that I
gentleman's gentleman
I'd heard is like the one of my favorite stories was Henry Rollins talked about how he got Lemmy to come in, and they were doing a benefit album for a legal defense fund for these kids who had gotten pegged for a crime that. Obviously, it seemed like it was a setup and all this, but asked Lemmy to do it, and he was like, "Yeah, sure." And so Henry goes to pick him up, brings him to the studio, and Henry had told one of the guys at the studio, he's like, "Okay, your job is you have to do craft services for Lemmy. So go get the biggest bottle of Jack Daniels that you can, and like a 6-pack of Coca-Cola." And a large bag of ice and set it up for him. And he says, so we bring Lemmy into the studio, and he goes in and he immediately turns right and then makes another left. Like he knows exactly where the drinks are without even being told. He just walks in, goes, makes himself a drink, has a couple of sips, comes out, and now he's ready to meet everybody. And he went around and he shook everyone's hand and introduced himself and met everyone and said hello and had a little bit of a back and forth with like everybody who was there. And just this guy who was like, he needed to have his beverage. Yep. And then he's like, yeah, very nice to meet you. Very nice to meet you. And like goes down the line. And
that is funny.
Was just one of these guys who's like, he's a gentleman, but he also isn't afraid to tell you to go F off if he feels that is the proper thing to do in that moment. And, there's not enough folks like that.
Nope. Of a bygone era.
Yes, to be sure.
Started with Triple H, we end with Lemmy.
And you know what?
I think Triple H would appreciate that.
Oh yeah, he would get a chuckle out of it because you know that every so often he's like, man, it'd be nice to see Lem every so
absolutely.
Probably didn't spend that much time with him, but at the time it was like, oh, it'd be nice to just bump into him again.
Yep.
Get a phone call or something.
100%.
And another thing.
All right, sir. Well, what do you got for In Another Thing this week?
Well, my And Another Thing is probably the furthest thing from Lemmy that you'll want to talk about, which is the Frasier reboot on the Paramount Plus. That's right. Hey, baby, I hear the blues are calling. Tossed salad and scrambled eggs.
Are they using that theme song again?
They are, just to a different peppier tune. So,
oh boy,
yeah. No, we watched it, and my wife and I watched the first. Well, we're now on the third episode. It's pretty. It's good. I mean, it's honestly not awful, but I mean, it's also like a lot of series, you have to kind of give it some time to see what the rhythm of it is. And in this one, I mean, Kelsey Grammer just is Frasier. I mean, he just, I mean, it's like he hasn't missed a beat, and it is very comforting to see him in that role. It is fun to see him in that role. And like I expected, it was going to be, kind of a story of, much like Frasier was about, him and the relationship with his father and his brother. This is now going to be a relationship of Frasier with his son and his son Freddie. And so yeah, no, it was a great start. I don't know the actor's name, but the actor who played Niles has basically opted out of playing. At this point, he just said, I have nothing more to do, in terms of the Niles character. So we won't see Niles, but we do see Niles and Daphne's son. And the actor who plays him does a really great job of, projecting that sort of, some of the whimsical nature of Daphne and the very OCD like nature of his father Niles. And so it's really, that part is really funny. They do a very nice job in the first episode of honoring John Mahoney and his character of Martin Crane. Very, very, just very well done. And overall, it's a fun show. It's just a very fun show. And, I don't know if it's going to last for beyond this season or not, but I don't know. We really like it. I know, for my wife, she was a little skeptical. Like, we really love the Frasier series as a whole. That is like comfort viewing for us. We watch it. We've done a couple full run throughs of the entire series as part of our viewing before we go to bed, and it's just a very comforting kind of show. It's just funny and has a lot of really good stuff to it. This one follows very much in the same rhythm as Frasier. There are those cut scenes where it has like a title and then you see the scene kind of play out. So they've maintained that piece of it, but it's in Boston and it's his return there, and he's wildly successful. And now it's just him, trying to reconnect with his son. And, it's an interesting story to tell. Like, he's really achieved materially the things he wants to, but his connection with his son is in shambles. And, like the things that really matter are just not there. And so it's been a fun watch. And so I'd highly recommend, if you are a fan of the Frasier series, I would highly recommend checking out the I don't even know if I call it a reboot. It's just kind of like the third act for this character. So it is Frasier on the Paramount Plus. Do check it out.
Very nice. And you are probably going to be very upset at me for saying this.
Yes.
I don't think I've ever watched a single episode of Frasier.
Oh, my friend, you need to.
And this is as an avid Cheers watcher. And I never wanted to.
It, again, I will say with season 1 of the Frasier show, you got to give it time. It's not like it's a right away sort of, oh yeah, this is clicking, I get it. It takes a little bit, with its rhythm and stuff, but it does find its way very quickly in season 1. And you start to see, they've always done a great job of riding that line between the comedic aspect of it and the stories they're telling, having heart and having depth to them. And they do a really good job of that. And so, I would highly recommend it. It's if you're looking for something, to kind of get you into the, kind of a mood to go to bed. I mean, it's not boring. I'm not saying it puts you to sleep, but it is something that you just feel comfortable with. it's funny. It makes you laugh and you feel good about it.
All right.
Do check it out.
Maybe I'll give it a try. I got to admit, probably not, because I'm in the midst of a Longmire rewatch right now. So
you're rewatching a show you've already seen.
Yes.
That's what I'm hearing you say.
Yes.
All right.
Same as you, like watching Frasier for the 12th time.
Well, the heart wants what it wants.
Ah, yes, it does.
And what is your and another thing, sir?
Well, so on a whim the other night, the fam and I decided to put on the Beckham documentary limited series on Netflix.
And did you immediately regret such decision?
No, I was actually it was one of those things where I'm like, I don't know if I want to watch this, but I'm like, all right, fine, whatever.
Yeah.
And it was interesting. It was very, very interesting because I've been, of course, aware of David Beckham because it's really hard not to be. The dude has been on approximately a trillion magazine covers, and his name has been bandied about, of course, as one of the more famous, sporting personalities on the planet. And of course, you can't get away from, coming up in the 90s and having any kind of contact with the Spice Girls. It's tough to miss Posh.
It is.
So it was one of those things where I'm aware of them and I'm aware of the power couple dynamic that they were and all that. But of course, being in the U.S. as opposed to the U.K. or Europe, there still is, even though we are very much in a global world, there is this delineation of things that are big in Europe are not always, as big in the U.S. And it's kind of interesting when those things happen. So it was very interesting to learn more about, David Beckham, his upbringing and kind of coming of age as a football player, soccer, for those of you, us heathens here in America, and kind of learning more about him. And it was fascinating to me, just like how good this guy was, but also like the amount of pressure that was put on this guy because of how good he was. And in a team sport, how there was a couple of times, specifically in the World Cup, when he really bore the brunt of the failure, in a way that felt unfair. Like he's supposed to elevate everything and do everything and all this. And it felt unfair in some of those respects. And then also one of the other things that was very interesting was discovering the personalities behind the Beckhams. Because honestly, I hadn't thought much about who Victoria, Posh Spice was. I didn't know anything about her. I was not a Spice Girls fan.
You just knew she was posh.
I did. I just knew, like, oh yeah, she's always the one in the very short dress with the high heels who can't do all of the dance moves that everyone else is doing because otherwise they would have to censor the video. But like actually hearing her speak in interviews, hearing him speak in interviews and learning more about them, like, wow, okay, this is kind of interesting. Like the dynamic between the two of them. And then just going through his entire career and kind of trying to understand who he was as a person, as an athlete, and then as a person, coming out of his athletic career. Very interesting. Like for someone who I do not follow soccer or football as it's called in the rest of the world, but I was fascinated by this. And it was one of those things where we're watching it. Of course, there's a lot of talk about football and watching different matches. And I'm like, I kind of want to get into this. Like, this is a fascinating thing. And watching it, I'm like, I can understand how people can be riveted by this because there's so much going on. But it was really interesting and also very well done as a documentary. Very well paced and it felt really good finishing it up. I was like, wow, this was a really good expenditure of time. So nice. I would highly recommend it, even if you don't give two squats about the Beckhams and or soccer / football, because that's kind of where I was at, and I enjoyed the hell out of it.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, maybe I should check it out then.
I think you should, and elevate yourself a little bit. I know that you are very cultured in many other ways, sir, but maybe this is a way that you can culture yourself a little bit more.
Cultured in the way of deviled eggs, Brussels sprouts, and steak, baby,
and bourbon,
of course.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, it's about time for us to pull up stakes and to move this freak show on to the next town where we will probably get run out on a rail.
Snake oil.
Thank you very much for tuning in. We really appreciate you listening to the podcast, and thank you to all the members of the Free Range Idiocy congregation who have been out there so just fervently. Your thoughts and prayers for us. Usually, just not doing a whole lot because there's not much that's going to improve our idiocy. But keep it up.
Believe.
Maybe for some more important stuff. We've developed about as far as we're gonna, and just ask our wives. It's not there's no upside. It's only downside from here.
Evolution stops at the range. That's
so
right.
We appreciate you all listening. If you are not a member of the Free Range Idiocy congregation and you want to join, well, we like to think of ourselves as the nice cult, and you can join just by listening and downloading and subscribing. So it's very simple. Go to freerangeidiocy.com. You can find all of our episodes there. You can download them all individually or all at once. You can subscribe through the Podbean app. And if you say to yourself, I've got enough apps in my life, unless, of course, there's deviled eggs or deep fried deviled eggs on the menu. In that case, bring those mothers over here. If you have enough apps in your life, then go ahead and find us on one of the apps that you get your podcasts through. We're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Pandora, Google Podcasts, whatever the hell Amazon calls their podcast service, and a whole bunch of others. Just look for Free Range Idiocy. You will find us. I guarantee it. You can also find us on the social medias. We are on the Instagram. We are on the Facebook. We are on the YouTubes. As a matter of fact, you can get all of our episodes on YouTube, full episodes there. So you can subscribe to our channel and get your episodes there as well. You can also, got to take a breath here. I was about to choke on my own spit. Sorry about that. I could edit that out, but I'm not going to because I'm tired, and I'm going to be tired when I'm editing this. So there you go. You can also send us questions, thoughts, concerns. If you have ideas for shows, if you have questions about what we've been yapping about, if you just want to be like, hi, then you send all of those to tim@freerangeidiocy.com, and he will get back to you ASAP, forthwith, if not sooner. And now, ladies and gentlemen, it is time for me to stop flapping my gums, and there was much rejoicing in the congregation. Hallelujah and an amen, even, if you will. However, not before. I turn to the man who's sitting next to the man who's sitting next to the man who's sitting next to the man who's sitting. Okay, I'm not going to do that. I'll you know what? You got to go to Robin Harris for the true joke on that, because I can't say those words on the podcast. We try and keep this a family show. I'm going to turn to the lesser idiotic of the two idiots who run this show, and I'm going to ask this man the second most important question in all of human history. The first being, what is hip? The second being, what the hell did we learn this episode?
We've learned the following, my friend. We have learned the man they call Tim is on the upward trend with fantasy football, and is going to go above and beyond the paltry 500 season that Uncle Todd has predicted. He will rise above and be above 500. We have learned that Ahsoka Season 2 may focus itself a little bit more on Baylan and Shin and their adventures in the wilds of Peridia. But we will see how that leads into Thrawn, who will be the ultimate endgame in the Heir to the Empire film, which we are looking forward to. We have also learned, Burt Young apparently didn't pass away in 2012, passed away last week. Uncle Tim, the man that called him is. Good God. Oh, that did make me humble. That mistake. Good God Almighty. We have learned that under Triple H, WWE is putting out a much better product, and we are thankful that the tomfoolery, chicanery, and general douchebaggery of Vince McMahon is no longer, and we have a solid product in front of us with a lot of options, a lot of interesting areas that it can explore and go into, and so we are excited. We are bullish on what these premium live events will be showing us as we move forward. Uncle Todd's got his Peacock subscription still, locked up and ready to go, and so
let me talk to you.
We will definitely bring some further episodes highlighting some of the fine work that the men, women, and creative team at WWE are putting out there.
Yeah.
Finally, we have also learned that Uncle Tim, I keep saying Uncle Tim, the man they call Tim, probably Uncle Tim is coming from the empty bottle of Woolershine. Yes, we have completed the Wisconsin straight bourbon whiskey bottled in bond from our August excursion.
The man they call Tim is going to put a message in there and leave it for his wife when he passes out downstairs in his recording studio.
That or the garbage man who's going to recycle that bottle, but nonetheless.
Hey!
Fantastic. Woolersheim. Do check it out if you have access to it.
It makes me think of the department store in Polar Express. I keep on thinking that's what it is. I know it's not, but that's what I think of.
Oh, my gosh.
Isn't there Herpesheimer?
Something like that.
Herpesheimer, herpes. We get back to Sean Waltman herpes again.
You find a way to work the word herpes into anything, don't you? Good God Almighty.
Hey, I mean, once it's there.
Good God. Anyways, as Uncle Todd has mentioned, we thank you for the downloads and the listenership. And as we like to close things out here on the range, be safe, be healthy, be kind, be good to one another. And you don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. The range is closed.
Yeah. You're such a disappointing pair. I prayed so hard for you. Get out. And don't come back until you've redeemed yourselves.
So say we all. So say we all.
You actually managed to kind of tie that all together this time.
Hey, man. We're done and done.
I know.
You got to save yourself.
I don't have anything to say. That's the problem. You gave me no ammunition that
Final
time.
thing we learned, man, they called Tim 170. His opponent 144.
You had to go and screw it up.
Victory is mine, saith the Macho Man Randy Savage.
And what's your record now?
I am 3-3-1.
Which is...
Hey, I'm 500, but there's plenty of season left to play.
Which is exactly what I
You said
predicted.
end of the season 500.
Still.
I will fight tooth and nail to avoid that.
You be humble, Bubba. It's
Can I
coming.
have the glorious theme, please? I'm winning. I'm winning.
Okay.
I'm Charlie Sheen winning. There it is. This is my team this past Sunday. They showed up. Come on. Come on.
That's all you deserve for getting to 500.
Oh, good Lord.
I'll tell you what.
Uncle Todd giveth and Uncle Todd taketh away.
I'll tell you what. You can have a little of this.
Oh, God. I don't want that. I want glorious. Oh, God. Let me talk to you. Oh, my God.
That's all I got to say about that.
Thank God.
Now get the hell out of here!